I've referred to the one-page business plan quite a few times over different talks. It's obviously a cornerstone of what we did in the leadership scale-up. But last workshop, a few people said, "Oh, we've never really," and I can't remember whether it was in the Power Up Day or in the workshop, but we've never really done the one-page business plan because it was something we did quite a while ago. And so I think it's worth cycling back to it. And actually, it's something that we should be using as a fundamental tool within our leadership meetings every quarter anyway. But perhaps if you're not using that, then you've never done some of the concepts that are dealt with in the one-page business plan. So I thought, okay, I'll go back and revisit that and deliver some new content around the opportunity to explain this existing tool. And then I was asked to speak at a conference last week called the BOMS conference, which was Michelle Hoskins's conference. Michelle obviously spoke last time. And she specifically asked me to deliver a talk that was entitled Unleash Your Entrepreneurial Spirit. So I was like, oh, all right, okay, I've not actually done that talk before. What does it mean to unleash your entrepreneurial spirit? So as I always do with these things, I went, okay, what's the framework that answers that question based on, what are the different areas that I think are your entrepreneurial spirit? And I came up with this framework called Entrepreneurial G-Force, which is actually where I then started. Oh, do you like that? Excellent. Yeah. Obviously,
different things.
Well, obviously, ChatGPT helped me create it, but it didn't think of different things. That's where I actually ended up coming back to this Guide to Great principle, when I thought about, well, okay, what is the thing that guides us? But it's definitely about goals. It's definitely about focusing in on the things that each individual is what you would call their genius. They're one or two things that they're really brilliant at. And it's about finding these constant gains. So I started to work through this, and obviously we spent the morning talking about our guide and the Guide to Great. But in Alice in Wonderland, there's a point at which Alice meets the Cheshire Cat, and she's at a fork in the road. And she says to the Cheshire Cat, which road do I take? And he says, where do you want to go? She says, well, I don't know. And he says, well, in that case, any road will take you there. And there's a really important point there, in that if you don't know where you want to go, any road will take you there. The same applies so that applies to the business owner, but it absolutely applies to every person in your team. If your team members don't know where the business is supposed to be going, any road will take them there, and they're totally justified in doing whatever it is that they want because they don't know the bigger goals. And in fact, it's actually, when you do the research, one of the biggest causes of depression in the workplace is the feeling of not knowing what the bigger purpose of the business is, where the business is going, and also not knowing how you actually impact that. So it actually comes right back to what we were already talking about with the scorecard and the vision. And the one-page business plan is just one of the ways that we can communicate those two things. It's basically we create this amazing vision, we work out how we measure success, and then we strategize around how we achieve it and adapt to the different changing situations so that we succeed in hitting it. And we see this in, if we think about the power of the guide, obviously we've just heard about it with Richard's story. But when we really know the power of a why something is important, we are willing to go through stuff that is way, way harder. So Sabrina Pace Humphreys has a community called the Black Trail Runners. She does ultra marathons, and she was doing a race that's probably the toughest race in the UK. It's called the Spine Race. It's a 268-mile run from basically across the length of the Pennines. So you start in the Peak District, you end in Scotland, and it's a mountainous, and it's done in the winter. It's tough. Sabrina's taking this on, and after 68 miles, so 200 miles still left to go, she's injured. But she's doing it for the black trail running community. That is basically, she is trying to, because there's actually not that many people for black people that do ultra running. So she's like, I've got to do this because this is the community I built. She finished that race despite being injured after 68 miles. So it drives you forward. And I've referred to this concept of the moonshot before. And it's a really simple way of thinking about what it, because when you think as a business owner, you've gone blue in the face because you've repeated the goal for the 100th time, that's the point the team are starting to get it. We live and breathe it in our own brain, but most of the people that are employed in the business, they go home and they stop thinking about work. So you've got to really work hard for them to really understand what the true purpose of the business is. And the moonshot is just a really lovely way of having a very single, easily communicated and understood and memorized goal for what you're trying to achieve. And so that is a really powerful principle. It's also an opportunity to plant seeds of things that you will never see grow. So I think that I'm trying to just going back to my notes here. So basically, it's like giving away the cure to polio. You're planting seeds that you're never going to see the benefit of, but these are big things that are beyond your future. And it comes back to what we talked about this morning, which is, Apple's principle of think different. That is just as powerful for the people that work inside Apple as the people that buy its products. So what's that look like? Well, so one of the things that you definitely need to do as part of a one-page business plan is understand what it means to be a part of the business. And this is going to come back to the core values of that business. And it's something that some of us have worked through in the past, which is the culture cultivator. If you want to focus in on this particular bit, the culture cultivator would be a way of doing that. And again, that's something that we could potentially do tomorrow, I suppose. But this is the EP code. This is what it means to be a part of Efficient Portfolio. And actually, we just carried this through to the trusted team because it's exactly what it still means to be part of our businesses. So it's embrace fun and be a little quirky, pursue growth and learning, constant and never-ending improvement, open and honest relationships, deliver wow through client service, an energized, positive and passionate team. That's what it's all about for us. That it's those values that we recruit through. So every time we're doing an interview, the questions are built around these questions because this is how we find people that fit into our values and our culture. So it's a really important thing to work on, and it's a vital thing that should be kind of revisited as part of the one-page business plan. Are those still our values? Does that still apply to this business? And are we still succeeding through those values? One of the ways that you can do that in the leadership meetings is each year we would do an assessment based on, we'd just go through all of the team members going, how do they live and breathe? How do they rate on these values? If there's a problem member of the team, I know you guys have just had to go through the difficult time of getting rid of somebody. I bet if you have you clearly marked out what it is your values are in the business? Okay, so I'm willing to bet if you went back and rated the person that you just got rid of on the values that it means to be a part of your business, they'd score really lowly. And every time there was something going on with somebody in the business, it would be like, yeah, and it's because they're completely not aligned. Another example of that, this is, Matt's not here today because he's in Disneyland, I think. But this is the accelerate ones. More difficult to remember. There's a lot there. But it's a good framework, and I like it. And actually, when we went through it at the annual leadership meeting last year, we're like, does that still apply? And yeah, absolutely. So to kind of sum up this whole area of guide, I want to quote Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, who was imprisoned in Auschwitz. And he has this famous quote, which is, he who knows his why will withstand anyhow. So your one-page business plan is the opportunity to really refine that down. Once you've got your your guide to great statement, or your why statement, or whatever you want to call it, and it's there, it's an opportunity to reflect back on it and continue to deliver it to your team, as well as the moonshot. Then we want to think about the goals of the business. And again, the one-page business plan is the opportunity that we can build the goals out for the business in the same way that we need to build it out personally. And again, I think that we need to break down regularly. I'm not going to go through the principles of why the run, walk, run strategy works really well in running a marathon, whether it's a marathon, an Ironman or not. But the point is, it breaks something much bigger down into small bite-sized chunks. And that's what we're trying to do. If we've got a big, big goal, what we want to do is break it down into small chunks and revisit it time and again. I've told you that analogy before, but we're going to spend much more time in the next workshop going through goals, because what I want to use is on the next workshop to be really about reflecting back on the year that's gone, but how do we make the next year even better? So I'm not going to go into spend much time on goals today, but ultimately you just got to remember the business goal process is the same as the personal goal process, which is you set these big lifetime long-term goals, which you probably wouldn't describe it as lifetime in business. You'd probably say 10 years is a better time frame. But then, well, what have we got to be doing in the next 3 years to be on track? What have we got to do over the course of the next year to be on track? What have we got to do over the next quarter to hit that 1 year goal? What have we got to do this month and this week? And of course, we've just heard Richard talk about goals, and it's something that comes up on the podcast so often. I've told you, the goal setting behind these guys before, but it's something that works in business too. So when I launched the Rural Business Community, we were setting goals to get the planning permission. We were setting goals to get the European funding. We were setting goals to fill the premises and get it launched, and we set goals to sell that business, all of which happened to be executed remarkably closely to the goals that we set. And there's no coincidence there. It's the same. I've told you the story about goal setting with the book and with my first Ironman and with getting to Kona. It actually is remarkable how often you hit those goals. The difficulty is setting big enough goals, but that's where you've got to set goals that you actually have no idea how to achieve. And then you'll work it out over the long run. It goes back to what Richard was just saying, actually, in that, you can do an Ironman. You just got to extend the time frame a little bit, and anyone in this room could do an Ironman. So yeah, the one-page business plan is definitely about setting big, scary, audacious goals for the business. Obviously, we want you to do that as an individual as well, and that's why we're going to sort of touch on the Limitless Life Planner next time, because I also know that last time a few of you said, oh, actually, I don't really know how to use that tool. We're going to go through that in the next workshop, because next workshop will be much more about creating some big, amazing personal goals for the year ahead. But it's also about the one-page business plan is also about identifying what it is that's your unique selling points as a business, what it is that makes you guys different to everyone else, what it is, what is your genius. And Richard Branson is just such an amazing example of this, because Richard Branson, when he had like many multi-million pound businesses, was in a boardroom, and his accountant said, or his CFO said, Richard, do you want to just step outside a minute? And he does. And he said, Richard, you don't actually know the difference between net and gross profit, do you? He's like, nope. So he said, let me explain. And he draws a fishing net, and he says, this is the ocean, and what's in your net is the net profit, and what's in the sea is the gross profit. He's like, all right, okay, yeah, that makes sense. He'd got to the point of many multi-million pound businesses without knowing the difference, because that wasn't his genius. His genius was bringing people together and finding people that were better at those things than he was. So it's about looking at, well, where is our genius? What are we going to focus on? And that's really what it's partly about. It's about what's our core focus? Yes, we could do all of these other things, but what is our core focus as a business? And it's about refining what that focus is. You know, an example for that, the hub and spoke, to try and provide a vibrant hub for people who want to fuel, focus, and connect would be an example of what that core focus is. Because the more it's clear in your mind as to what the core focus of the business is, the easier it is to then communicate that to the team. And then what I would also do within the one-page business plan is think about, well, what are the 3 things that make us unique? Now, there's probably, if you think about what you do, there's probably lots of people that do some of what you do, but there's usually, if you look, there's 3 things that you do that when added together make you unique. Now, it might not be unique. Yeah, there might be other companies, but it puts you in a very small group of firms. So what would those be? Well, you know, an example of that would be that the hub and spoke was set out to be a cafe that welcomes working, a business hub, and a cycling cafe. There's not, pardon? Welcoming staff, exactly, yes, absolutely. But the point is to add those 3 things together, and there's not many places that would do that. Yes, you might say the Rafa Cafe in London does, but that's fortunately miles away. Then we want to think, the one-page business plan wants to help you refine down what the marketing strategy is, because the bigger the business gets, the more different strategies you get. And I actually think it's really helpful, and I've just gone through this again recently with these businesses and gone, right, okay, so what are the core marketing strategies? How do we categorize the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things that we think are the best route to our ideal clients? Because I think when you start to find those categories, it becomes easier to manage as opposed to having this scattergun approach. Certainly for me, that's the case. So it's a process of just going, okay, well, how do I group these things together so that they make sense? It's also an opportunity to get down your elevator pitch, because obviously in these workshops, I've asked you to share your elevator pitch sometimes. And that's a great thing to do. And actually, it's often a struggle for the business owner to share their elevator pitch. So if you think it's difficult for you, what chance have the people that work for you got of having a clear understanding of what the elevator pitch is? And in fact, the more you can give them an understanding of the elevator pitch, the more when they're down the pub chatting to their mates, and their mate says, oh, what is it you do? They can give a line that will go, oh, that's interesting. That's exactly what I need. So if you can communicate an elevator pitch to your team have got much more opportunity to share it. Same with a partnership. You know, I was talking to founders yesterday about how to build partnerships. It's all about articulating what you do. The elevator pitch is a really lovely way of being able to do that. So if you bring that into the one-page business plan, you can help the whole team understand how you explain that business. And then finally, it's about finding the opportunity to find gains. We've talked about marginal gains before. You all know the story of Sir Dave Brailsford winning 7 of the 10 gold medals that were available in London 2012. And so we're constantly trying to find those gains. And one of the ways that you can do that is through the Learning Library. The Learning Library was this concept. Does everyone here know what the Learning Library? So I know a few of the old hands will, but no, do you not know what the Learning Library? I can't remember the last time I talked about this. Okay, so the Learning Library, basically, I knew that I was getting loads from reading books. And I was sitting on holiday reading a book going, wouldn't it be amazing if my team were also reading these books? Wouldn't it be really brilliant if my team were reading the books that I know are helping me grow the business? So I came back from holiday, sat the team down and said, right, I've had this idea. For every few books you read out of the Learning Library, you know, we obviously pay you more when you pass a financial services exam, but for every few books that you read from the Learning Library, we'll also pay you more. We created this little ladder system so you could move from being the wizard to the guru to a whole load of other names. Charlotte at this time, who literally reads a book in a weekend, is like, hang on, did you just say you're going to pay me more to read books? I'm like, yes. So like a week later, she's like, I've read 5. It's like, whoa, right, okay, maximum of 5 in 12 months. Yeah, but in 12 months, we're only going to pay you, we're only going to increase your pay once a year based on reading 5 of these books. And we put a condition in to say that you also need to send no more than 1 page of, this is what I learned from the book, and this is how we could operate the business differently to make it even better based on this learning. And what would happen is I'd get an email out of the blue from, let's say, one of the power planners, and they'd be like, well, I've just read the referral engine, and I know I work behind the scenes so that I don't meet the clients, but if we did this, this, and this, based on the advice of this book, we would generate more referrals. And I'm like, wow, that is cool. I am getting, now the whole team is growing. And in fact, one of our 6 human need is growth. So what you would find is that the employees are happier because they can see that they're growing as an individual. We're growing as a business because everyone's upskilling themselves. And we're getting way more ideas on how to improve the business. It is a brilliant, brilliant concept. As a result, I actually get quite a few people ask about the Learning Library. Even I had one ask a few weeks ago based on a talk I'd done 2 years before. And I actually think somebody else had mentioned it to them on that journey. So what we've done is we've just created we've turned it into an attraction marketing device. We've turned it into just a PDF, but I'll send you guys a copy of it, or get Amy to send you a copy of it in the follow-up. Because if you want to implement the Learning Library in your business, I can highly, highly recommend it. It's one of the best things that we ever did. And this will just give you a guide as to how we did it. And it will also give you a link that we created with Nitesh. That's the Life Library, which is slightly different, but is a whole load of the books that I would put in your Learning Library. So that's one way you can generate constant gains. But it is about the difference in thinking of Tesla versus NASA. NASA is super defensive. We will only do something once we're 100% guaranteed it's going to work. Whereas Tesla's like, oh, but we'll just try it, and if it doesn't work, we'll tweak it and try something different, and if that doesn't work, we'll try something different, and eventually we'll come to a solution that does work. And of course, with regards to technology, it's about humanizing the exceptional and automating the repetitive. The final piece of the one-page business plan is then this opportunity to identify the key problems that are holding the business back at that moment in time, to then discuss them and then find a strategy to just get on and fix it. Because it's all very well, we've all been in meetings where we come up with these problems and then you walk away knowing the problems, but without a specific strategy as to what you were going to do. So it's definitely an opportunity, and this comes from traction. It's kind of it's one of the influencing pieces for the one-page business plan for me. But this IDS concept of just identify the problems, discuss them, and then come up with some strategies as to how you're going to do it. And of course, the leadership meeting, which is all built around that traction EOS system, is how when you would keep coming back to this. So typically, I would use the one-page business plan as the whole, plus the agenda for the leadership meeting as the main tools process to go through on the leadership meeting. I think everyone here except maybe Bhavik has done the leadership scale up or understands. Is that right? I think it was your first workshop, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. So the one-page business plan really is how you center that, and then the agenda of the leadership meeting you just follow through, and it's fairly self-explanatory, I think. It's difficult to say that it's not. And then obviously there's a longer version of this meeting with for the annual leadership meeting.